So good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. Good afternoon here in the room, and good afternoon to our Zoom participants online. Really excited to welcome you to a Happy New Year and to celebrate all that was accomplished last year and all that we have to look forward to in the coming year. And I want you all, and even if you're in your office, and I'm talking to you Zoom people, I want everyone to just like give yourselves a round of applause because this was a big old year. I think if we take a step back and think about all that's been accomplished, that you accomplished in a very short period of time, because a year went by very quickly. And in fact, today is my 1-year anniversary. So that's how I know how quickly 1 year has gone by. Thank you. All of the work that you've done, all of the getting back to your agencies, building relationships, if you were still in your agency, building those relationships, making sure that when we rolled after consolidation, that we hit the ground running, that nobody skipped a beat. You think about rapid hire. I mean, just rapid hire. If we'd only done rapid hire in 2019, what a big year that would have been. And that's just all testament to you, your dedication as professionals, as a community coming together, really celebrating the people who have joined our community in the last year and who are looking forward to joining in the coming year. So I just really, I say this a lot, but I want to thank you all deeply for your service and for your commitment, not only to your agencies and to the state, but to the people who work in your agencies, because they rely on you and they trust you and they care about you because you care about them. So with that, we're going to go into like the touchy-feely part of HR, tax law. We have got some excellent guest presenters today. So we have from DFA, we have Lakeisha Holly. We have Audrey, Liddy, and Jim Hightower from Do It for the Share team. And we have they all came with a posse. So I want to welcome the posse who came from DFA and from Do It. And I'm going to turn it over to them because, as you know, the W-4 form from the Fed side changed. Everyone's like, yeah, I know about it. And so they're going to walk through. They have a really detailed PowerPoint, and they invite questions and answers as well, so that we can all become very familiar with moving through the W-4 tax form. And there are also some really excellent share tips at the end, share expert tips, which they're also going to invite questions from. And then that's the first hour. And then we'll get up and we'll stretch and shake it out. And then the second hour, we'll do recruitment tips and tactics. And that will be with our team here at State Personnel. So with Sheila and Cynthia Sandoval, and they'll be up here talking about recruitment. And then we're also going to invite your participation in that as well, so that we can all learn from each other, which is one of the points of this HR Council. So I think we've got, I'm also now been told that I have to take a microphone when I go sit down, because what I tend to do is like jump up and ask a question, and then all you can hear from the background is like the Charlie Brown Christmas. And so I'll keep the microphone over here, but I will promise not to talk into it until I have something meaningful to say. And with that, I will turn it over to Lakeisha and Audrey and Jim. And please join me in welcoming them to HR Council.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Lakeisha Holly, for those of you that may not know me. And there's one thing on the slides that we had forgot about that I was reminded of before I came here. The New Mexico minimum wage, it went into effect 1/1, so that new minimum wage is $9 an hour. And then, so I'm going to jump into the W-4 form. I've been getting lots of questions about it. And so the new tax rates went into effect last pay period. So you probably had seen some changes on that. And that happens every year. That's nothing new. And the new, but there is new federal withholding methodology and the W-4 form. So I sent out a memo about a week and a half ago, and it explained the new methodology and exactly we should be reminding employees that we're not tax professionals, and that, you know, they need to seek out a tax professional if they have questions in regards to the new form, because it is quite a little confusing until we get the hang of it and entering in. First, this is the first major change since 1987, and this was, of course, a result of the tax reform that was passed in 2018. New Mexico has also changed its withholding methodology, and it's to utilize with the new IRS W-4 form, but this change has not been implemented into SHARE just as yet. So as soon as it's tested and we can move on with it, we'll send out another memo notifying the HR community that it's been implemented and we can start using it. So the old form used allowances, which included the employee and any dependents the employee claimed. So this is the old form, and it was simple. We had like total allowances, usually is what people looked at, number 5. And then from there, you just signed and dated it. How many allowances you want? Single 1, married 2. So it's quite simple. The new 2020 W-4, it's completely redesigned. It has a head of household filing status. So what they're referring it to is like a mini tax return. And so once again, I just highly recommend that we let employees know that if they need help with filling this out, they should visit the IRS website. They should also use the tax estimator as well, because that can give them a good idea of what they should be claiming. And then if employees need, additional information when they're filling this out, such as their spouse's earnings, previous deductions, and other income sources, that we just recommend that they have that available in front of them. So it's kind of like when you're gonna maybe go buy a house or something, you have all your tax stuff with you. And so it's kind of the same thing. We just wanna make sure they have everything together. And so it will just be helpful when they're filling out these new forms. And this is the new W-4 form, which I'll let Audrey go into depth about it, but this is how it looks. Step 1 and 5 are required, and then step 2, 3, and 4 are optional for the employees. And so that is a little bit more of a breakdown on exactly how that is. So I'll let Audrey go over those parts.
Hello. Haven't seen some of you in a long time. How are you all? Awesome. And for those of you who don't know me, I'm Audrey Liddy. I'm with the SHARE team over at Do It. All right. All right. All right. So this is the new W-4 form. So how many of you have tried filling it out? Yeah. And thoughts? Yeah, it's a little bit more complicated, but it's not too bad. So like Lakeisha said, step 1 is required. That's pretty basic information. The one thing that an employee does have to choose is whether they are choosing the single or married filing separately, married filing jointly, or the new status, which is head of household. Step 2 is for if the employee, either the employee has multiple jobs or the employee has a spouse and the spouse works. So we're not going to give advice on this, but the employee has 2 options here. They can choose to check the box on step 2, which means that either they have a second job and in both jobs they earn approximately the same amount of money, or the spouse has a job and the spouse earns approximately the same sort of money. It is recommended here on this worksheet that if the spouse or the second job is of a much different income from the first job, that you do the worksheet that is on page 3, I think it says. Yeah, anyway, it's there in the directions. So if they choose to check the box, that's fine. But if they don't choose to check the box and they want to account for that other income, then they can do the worksheet. And then that will come into play on step 4. So step 3 is for dependents. That's pretty straightforward. If you have children under the age of 17, then it's each child by 2,000 multiplied by 2,000. And if they have other dependents that they can claim for tax purposes, it's $500 per dependent. And that would be the amount that would go into box 3. And then the income that I was talking about from the worksheet would be, it goes into box 4C. I misspoke earlier. So if the employee has a spouse that works and they earn fairly different incomes from one another and they fill out the form, the worksheet, then that amount would go into box 4C. But that's all explained in here. So it's just very important to read through this. And if the employee does have questions or they really don't know what to put in, that's where we cannot advise as to what to do. All right, any questions on the new form? No? All right, so here's how it would be put into share. And I think you guys, have you all seen the job aid that we put out? Yeah, okay, so if you haven't seen the job aid, it is available on our website, and later on I will give you the address to that. And it's very helpful. Alok, thank you for putting that together, help with that. It's pretty straightforward, right? You take the new W-4 form and plug it in. The one thing you have to remember is to check the radio button for the 2020 or later, and then you just follow the steps. So filing status, step 2C, checkbox. If they checked it, you would check that multiple jobs or spouse works. The dependent amount, other income deductions, and extra withholding. So it correlates. There's a one-to-one correlation between the W-4 and the entry into share. All right, so important things to remember with this new form. New employees who are hired after 1/1/20 in share will default to the new form. So that radio button will automatically be checked for them, and they will be set up as single filing status, similar to how it worked previously, where they were set up as single and 0. So it's the same thing, they're set up as single, and then none of the boxes have any values in them. This is a big one, because this one concerns us a lot, and that's it, and ensure all amounts are entered correctly. This is not a simple add 3 allowances like we did previously. This is you have to enter a numerical value into multiple fields. And if that numerical value is not entered correctly, it can have a significant impact on the employee's tax calculation. So please double check your work every time you're entering one of these in, that you've entered the numbers exactly as the employee has indicated on the form. All right, if you have any additional information about this, a very good resource is publication 15T. That's a new publication by the IRS, and it has the actual calculation instructions. It has the tables and the calculation instructions, and there's a worksheet now that contains quite a number of steps that you have to do to get to the final tax calculation. And that's essentially what share is now doing. It's essentially doing that worksheet when we run the tax calculation, or when we run the pay calculation process. And the final version is out. Up until I think last week, it was still in a draft status, but the final version is now up. And so part of this change, and part of the reason why we're notifying you of this so late, is because the IRS did not finalize most of this until right before Christmas. So all of this, all of their publications were still in draft status until very recently. All right. So one note of caution, and that's that employees who complete the new W-4 form may see a significant change in their federal withholding amount. I did it during testing, and my tax calculation was about $200 less per paycheck than it was previously. So I don't know. I mean, this scares me a little bit, right? At the end of the year, am I going to end up owing, if I change my W-4 and I start using this new methodology, am I going to have to owe? The IRS's goal with all of this is that at the end of the year, you neither owe or receive a refund, right? That you're even. But it's really hard, you know, you have to be cautious. So that is just one thing that employees may decide to use this new form, and they may come to you and say something's wrong because my tax calculation is way off. So just beware that it may significantly change your employee's tax withholding. All right, so back to New Mexico withholding. Lakeisha touched on this earlier. With the 2020 change, New Mexico has changed their withholding as well. But because all of this was finalized so late in the calendar year, Oracle has not yet given us a fix specifically for New Mexico. So we cannot calculate to New Mexico standards yet, which means that if an employee comes to you and wants to fill out a new W-4, you know, the guideline in the FYI 104, which is the publication by Tax and Rev, is to use the federal W-4, the 2020 form, but because we cannot do that in the system yet, our guidance is to continue to use the 2019 form for New Mexico withholding, right? As soon as Oracle gives us that fix, we will test it and we will get it in as soon as we've successfully tested it. But we don't have a timeline on that right now. All right. So again, I already said this, an employee can update their federal W-4 without updating New Mexico if they so choose. If they want to update New Mexico, then they really have two options. Our recommended option is have the employee use the 2019 federal W-4, or the second option is have the employee complete the 2020 form and input the changes once the New Mexico withholding methodology has been implemented. That's not recommended, obviously, because then you have to track that. And I wouldn't want to do that personally. All right, any questions on the W-4 process, new taxes? Yes.
I had an employee fill out the new 2020 W-4, but when they turned it in, they only gave me the first page, the very first page. And on 4C, they have a dollar amount. They signed and dated it, but that doesn't include the worksheet. Is that going to be sufficient?
Yes, you do not need. Okay, so the question was the employee turned in, so they must have turned in 1 and 2, right? Because it's a, or no, you're right, it's a 1-page form.
Yeah,
we just split it out on here. So they only, yeah, the employees are not required to turn in the worksheets, right? So that was, so the question was, is it okay to input the new W-4 into Share without having the worksheet? The answer is yes.
And they can, and only employees that want to update or who are hired after 2120 need to submit forms.
Yes, so Lakeisha just made a good point, and that's that employees are not required to fill out a new W-4, only if they want to change to the new withholding methodology or they want to update their withholdings, or if they are new hires in 2020. All right. Any other questions on the W-4s, taxes? Okay, so now we're going to move on to electronic W-2s. We do highly encourage employees to sign up for electronic W-2s and Share. Does everyone know what that means? Does anyone not know what that means? Because there sometimes seems to be confusion as to the printed copy. Does everyone know what a consent is? No. For the W-2s? No? Okay, so a consent for W-2s, when you consent to receive your W-2 electronically, it means you are opting out of receiving the printed form. Okay, which is great because then DFA doesn't have to print as many W-2s. They don't have to be distributed by DFA to all the agencies. You don't have to distribute them to your employees. Your employees have the ability to go on to Share, pull up their W-2, download it if they want to, or not. They can just pull the information and close it out and not risk having it on a public printer. This is, I think it's great because if you think about all the hands that are on someone's W-2 between central payroll and getting it to the employee, that's a lot of hands. And so this is really in this day and age where people are stealing information, I think it's really good. You should maybe encourage your employees who have access to Share to opt out of receiving the printed copy. We do have an adoption rate right now of about 38.5%, which is good. It's better than last year. Every year we seem to be getting a little bit better, but let's see, let's get it as high as we can. And then employees must do this themselves. You cannot go in for them and opt out for them. They have to go into Share and check the consent box themselves. And then they do need to do that before the W-2s are printed, otherwise they will still receive that printed copy. Any questions on that? W-2s? The consent, okay, so the question is, where do you get the form? There isn't a form, it's online, it's on Share. And we do have instructions on our website. We have a job aid as to how you can do that, but it is available through employee self-service in Share HCM.
I'll say, this is Pam from Untitled. I did it this morning, super easy, and I opted in. It's on when you log in, Share on the front page, it takes you to the entire job aid, and that was very.
Thank you for that endorsement, Pam.
Let's see now.
Will the head of household box be added to Share?
So the question is, will the head of household box be added to Share? So I'm assuming this is for New Mexico tax, because the federal tax is there. The federal head of household option is there. The New Mexico head of household option will be available when we receive the update from Oracle. Yes. I'm sorry, can you repeat? Oh, yes. Yes, so the question is, aren't DFA's printers secure? Because I alluded to security. Yes, things are secure, but once you receive that printed copy, it's not secure. You know, it is a printed copy. It could get lost.
It can go to an old address.
It could go to, yeah. And the DFA receives many returned W-2s every year because the addresses are out of date. You know, you have to figure, someone has to pick it up from DFA. It goes through a runner. It goes to HR. Those have to be distributed. Sometimes people leave them upside down on a chair, which is not okay, but it happens. It's just, it's a liability. So it's not that we're not secure.
Yeah. Once it leaves DFA, it's out of our control. We can't.
Correct. So yes, like Lakeisha said, once it leaves DFA, it's out of everyone's control. Right, any other questions?
Questions online. One Zoom asks, do the employees need to opt out every year?
The question is, do the employees need to opt out every year? The answer is no. Once you opt out, you are opted out until you either you withdraw your consent or you terminate. When you terminate, we change you back to receive a printed W-2.
Okay, so that's the next question. How does an employee get a W-2 when they have been terminated? Does it revert automatically to be printed when their login is inactivated?
Yeah, it's not an automatic process. It's a process that we run, but it does, for terminated employees, we do change them back before we run the print process. Any other questions? All right. You guys ready for some expert tips? Because you don't look ready. All right. I'm going to introduce Jim Hightower for expert tip number 1.
Thank you. So this past holiday season, Thanksgiving and Christmas, a lot of us had a few issues with holiday pay, just a few. And I want to explain something. This year is going to be worse than last year because this year we have Thanksgiving and Christmas both falling on the holiday falling on a Friday, which is also the end of the pay period. And that's where the problem occurs, when the holiday falls on the end of a pay period. And the reason for that is because the system looks at your schedule, and if your schedule, it wants to know, did you put any hours at all on the last scheduled workday? Because if you didn't, the rule says you don't get holiday pay. You don't get holiday pay, or you don't accrue any holiday either. And the reason why this works normally on a pay period where the holiday is not at the end of a pay period is because the rule also says if you have to work either the day before or the day after, the scheduled day before or day after. So just a word of advice that when we get to the next Christmas and New Year's, Christmas and Thanksgiving for next year, that you manage the schedule. Does everybody understand what I say when I say manage schedule? So manage schedule is really just a temporary override of your schedule. And what we found is that a lot of people, employees are saying, oh, well, I'll just work my shift on Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, but I won't work on Wednesday. But if they're scheduled on Wednesday and the holiday's on Thursday, they won't get the holiday paid. Make sense?
Can you explain about managed schedules or the timesheet? How they correlate together? Because I think that's where people get confused too. Is they're looking at the timesheet, but what they're entering is still, it's not managing the schedule. So just because they're managing the timesheet, it's not managing the schedule. I think that's where they're getting confused.
Oh, okay. So did we send a memo or something about
We're gonna
the?
get something together about the holiday and the graph.
Okay, so the place that you go to manage schedules is under manager self-service. Amber Alert. Okay. When you go under manager self-service, I think it's under manager self-service, manage schedules. So there's manage schedules and there's maintain schedules. So you want to do is manage your schedule. Manage schedule means that what you do is you enter the employee ID and then the week that you want. And what will happen is a little bar will open up at the bottom and it'll show you the scheduled hours that they're scheduled to work. And what you have to do is click on like the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. If you click on the 0800, the time that they're scheduled, another window will pop up, and then you can change and override the schedule and say that they're off or whatever.
And I'll include that in the memo, the navigation and something like that. So I'll send out a memo pretty soon, probably by the end of this week, regarding managing schedules.
And we also, we created a grid that gave you some information about what happens based on your work group that you're in. And did you send that out?
It's going to be part of that.
Okay, so we have a grid that's going to come out too that shows you based on the work group what's going to happen. You may not know this, but there is a situation where an employee could be an OT pay work group, which means they should get always paid for their overtime. There is a situation where they could get accrued holiday, and that is if they're not scheduled for the holiday. A lot of people don't know that. So, yes.
Going back to the holiday pay when we don't report hours, we just want to make sure that we, as the classified service, know the rule says it's only AWOL. If you're AWOL, you
Yes.
don't get paid.
If you're
So
AWOL,
it's not matching our goal. Just so-
true.
so
And we're
the
going to look at
audience
that in the coming year to change that.
Could you repeat what you just said?
Yeah, I'm sorry. So the point was that the NMAC policy says that the only time you don't get holiday pay is if you report AWOL before or after the holiday. That's what the policy technically does say.
Well, that's actually the rule, Jim, so like the issue for us,
So-
like it's the rule, the MS is the rule. So the policy that you, I want to make sure that in this room, the classified service, they're all very diligent about following the rules. And I love the fact that you guys are looking. Sorry.
Thank you.
Yes.
And I appreciate that you all are looking into making share match what the rule is on this, in this regard. And especially since this is a year where it's like the perfect storm of the holiday, the Friday, the end of the pay period, et cetera. So it's great that we're talking about it early and that perhaps when that gets to that point, the rule and the share rule will match.
Right.
Excellent.
Technically, the working the day before or the day after the holiday is not in the policy. But it's been around like that since 2006. So, any other questions?
We have a question online. Are we allowed to create W-2s for employees like self-service paychecks?
Well, it's going to be the same as previous. You selected South Plan administrators, and it's once again going back to security measures. We have another tip that's going to come up.
Yeah, could you jump up here to?
Yeah.
Come on.
So it's just like the same with any security measure with your W-2s. We don't want, if you're an agency of 200 people, why do we need 10 people printing out, having access to print out W-2s? And so we have something that came up last year where we had to go back and figure out, well, who printed out someone's W-2 and things like that. So it's a security purpose. And so in order for us to make sure that we're on our end doing due diligence and trying to make sure that it's secured, we're gonna limit it to only South Plan administrators. And if you don't know who your South Plan administrator is, you can contact me and I'll let you know. Or if for some reason they're not there and a couple of days go by and then if I have to print it, then I'll print it.
They see that. Can we print them when they are terminated?
Yes, they can.
Yes.
Mhm.
Who knows about alternate work schedule and holidays?
Well, Jim will probably finish with that, yeah.
That was all I had on holidays.
We just got a question.
Okay.
I have a question based on the alternate work schedule. If a holiday is recognized on the day off of a 4-day work schedule, does the employee receive the next business day off?
No, they receive comp time. They should receive comp time. For holiday comp time, yeah. That's it? Okay, thank you.
All right. Tip number 2. This is one, especially at the request of our help desk here, Dwayne Boykin, whom I'm sure many of you have had the pleasure of working with. This is something that comes up a lot, which is the removal of MCOPs before entering a termination. And he's having to correct history on job data frequently for this issue. So it's just a general reminder that if you are entering a termination into share, that please check to see if the employee has a multiple component of pay aside from supervisory pay before entering the termination in. Right, any questions on that? No? Okay. If you do happen to do it, submit a help desk ticket. All right, number 3. This is another general reminder because we are still getting, or we had an incident, we've had a couple of incidents recently where employees were hired with the wrong social security number, right? And it wasn't, it was because the employee had the same name. So 2 employees at an agency who were rehired, not based on looking to see if the social was correct, but just basing it on name alone. And it, you know, the employee, this was a little bit of a mess because the employees got paid with the wrong social security number. So please, reminder that if you are performing a new hire or a transfer or anything and you don't know for sure if the employee exists in the system or you don't know for sure that their employee ID, then please use the statewide employee search. That I've given the navigation here in case you've forgotten the navigation. Workforce Administration, Job Information, NMS statewide employee search. You can put the social security number in there and it will tell you if an employee exists with that social security number. Okay, so and this is really important because if employees have changed names, you can't rely on the name as a search. And we are in a state where people have a lot of the same last names. So please don't use that as criteria for choosing an employee when you rehire. All right, any questions on that? Oh, also please, always validate the social security number against the social security card because we still also get a lot of typos where the number is one off from the actual social security number. And a lot of times it's not discovered until we go and print W-2s. And the employee comes back and says, my social's wrong on my W-2. And it's because it's been incorrect all along. It was fat fingered or maybe they wrote it down, maybe a number was read incorrectly. So please always validate against the social security card. Right, did you want to?
New processes for direct deposit. Mark has sent out a memo and then I piggybacked off that memo. I don't want to get any direct deposit confidentiality forms for people who are current. It's only for new. So I've been swamped with a lot of new direct deposit confidentiality agreements. So it's only if it's a new employee in an HR function. But that's up to the agency as well to determine that. Like we just said about W-2s, why do we need 10 people printing W-2s for 200 employees. Why do we need 10 people having access to entering direct deposits? So you really need to be careful when you're making these selections. Maybe, you know, you have the main person, maybe an HR manager, and maybe you have a backup. But I mean, you have to weigh that. But there is going to be limitations. Like if an agency, I don't know, has 100 employees, I'm thinking two at max should have that access to that. And so as I get them, I'll make that determination and see, like if I see, well, you already have maybe Department of Health, the largest agent, one of the largest ones, they have maybe 5 people already and they want maybe 4 more. Then I'm kind of like, I don't think that's necessary. So maybe I'll go back to them and say, you know, do you want to maybe swap out someone for something else? So it's just going to depend, and I'll have to just weigh that out. And yeah, that's it on direct deposits.
So would we be able to have like a one-off conversation with you to let you know like our unique situation?
Yeah. Yes, he wanted to know if we would be able to have a one-off conversation on improving in their unique situation. Yeah, definitely. So if we can not send any more, if you already have access, you have access. We're not going to take it away. But I may if I keep getting forms. Just kidding.
We talk about the fraud.
Fraud.
Why we're doing this.
Okay, so why we're doing this? Fraud. We've had, I don't know, in the last 3 months or so, 2 months, we've had 2 big frauds. So employees are entering in direct deposits for active employees that came through an email, and the email address was not legit. So it's just, if you can be careful with the steps that we gave out. If someone comes, it's easier if it's in person, right? Someone comes to you, they give it to you. But sometimes, you know, we don't have that luxury and they're in a different city or county. And so we have to just make sure we're verifying that. So I just strongly recommend that your agency has internal controls when you're entering this. I mean, I would have someone double check, like, because I can easily, I'm, you know, in a haste doing payroll, and I'm like, oh, I need to hurry up and get this in, not looking at, is this email legit? Did I follow up and with the employee and ask them if they wanted to change their, you know, their direct deposit, things like that. So it's yeah, we're all humans and we make mistakes, but we need to make sure that we have someone that's double checking our work, and there's internal controls for that. And so yeah, they're targeting high profile employees, so like cabinet secretaries, and so these are, you know, $3,000, $4,000 net pay that the agency is having to take that as a loss. So if we can just be careful and make sure we have some kind of internal controls and we have a check and balance, you know, when we're entering those in.
So phishing is a really good line of business. That's just a fact. And also phishing for HR people, when HR people, like, all we want to do is like make it right by people and do the right thing and make sure they get their money and make sure, like, that's what your impulse is. And so you're being preyed upon by the phishing bad people. That's as much as I'll go. They're preying on you because of how, like, what good people you are. It's even, you're more vulnerable. So you're more vulnerable because you're such good people. So that's why you have to be even more, like, you don't want to really always be in a defensive crouch, like people are always out to get us. But that's what's happening. They're taking advantage of, like, the fact that you are wanting to do the right thing all the time. So it's not like you're so vulnerable because there's something wrong with you. It's just like they're preying on your primary nature of being the good people. So that's what we just want to protect you from. We just want to protect you from, like, yourselves of being like the super good, diligent, want to make sure you get it done right for whoever it is in your agency. So thank you for, you know, internal controls, and thank you for protecting your people even more, because that's what your impulse is, and that's why this has happened. Audrey.
Another question.
Okay.
Will a handout of today's presentation be provided to attendees?
The question is, will a handout be provided to the attendees? This can certainly be emailed out. I don't know if you all have a distribution list. Okay, so Spoke can distribute this. All right, final tip for us, and then we have a note from Cassie. Please don't forget that there are a lot of resources available to you. I think sometimes we all tend to forget that there's things out there where we can find additional information. Once we're done looking at cat videos, we can actually find real information on the internet. All right, one of those is our own website, so I'm going to plug that, share.state.nm.us. The other one is DFA Central Payroll. I didn't put the full address because it's kind of a messy one, but the core address is nmdfa.state.nm.us. From there, you can go to the financial control down to Central Payroll Bureau link. There's a lot of great information out there, and in fact, I will click on one of these. We have internet access here. All right, so here's our website. We have a note about the 2020 tax changes, also about electronic W-2s, and then we have our whole HCM dropdown where we have job aids, we have the security forms, training links. I think there's some links to ELM there, and there's also, I think, some videos on there, some links to videos. So there's quite a bit of good information, and we're always trying to add more as we can, which is tough, but we do try to add as much as we can when we can. All right. Thanks, Audrey. I have a quick walk on at Pam's request, so I'm unprepared, and it's her fault. When am I too short to be seen? Okay. So a quick plug for something exciting that's coming. We revamped the HCM user access form. Yay! I know it doesn't seem like a big deal. It's one page with some instructions, but people use it on a regular basis to get access for new employees, or especially access for HR folks. And honestly, it was kind of confusing. And it made sense to us because we live in Share, but it didn't really make sense to normal people. And so we hired a normal person. He's here today. He's fairly new to our team, Alok Sinha. And we tortured him, gave him the opportunity as a new set of eyes to say, how would you change this? What would be better to somebody who doesn't live in Share every day yet? That day's coming. And I think he, in conjunction with others on the team, did a fantastic job of just top to bottom revamping the form to be in English. So we have it out to a couple of people to preview now to make it even better. And then we're going to release it in the next 2 weeks to everybody. So it'll actually be linked where it says user access form right there. We'll have it up here. It's a good idea actually to come to the website every once in a while and just download the form so you always have the most current. But it's going to be awesome in about 2 more weeks. And once you start using it, if you have ideas about how to make it better or something doesn't make sense, let us know. We're happy to have that conversation. We're happy to make it even better. So that was my plug. I think we're going to have yes, there's even more coming. Vanessa. And then we're going to open it up, I think, to general questions. And if they're really hard, Audrey and Lakeisha have to answer them. All right, thanks.
So just another quick plug. Hi, everybody. For those of you who don't know me, I have to come close with the mic. I'm Vanessa Martinez. Recruiters, those of you that are getting new access to recruiting, one thing that is already up on the new form is recruiting access. There's been some confusion because there's Dwayne Boykin's class, who handles the new HCM user training. So what needs to happen now, if you're going to be an HR update requesting those types of access and a recruiter, you need to give both certificates of completion to gain access. Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay. Great. That's it.
All right, so I didn't find a cat video, but I'm gonna come back here. I do have a cool little GIF, however you want to say it. Mario, yay. Yeah. All right, so any questions? Anything, well, not anything, but it can be anything HCM related. Chuck. Yes. You want us? Yeah. All right, so
We'll do this together.
okay.
Okay, so first, No, don't go anywhere.
All
Yes,
right.
we want to know about paid parental leave. So paid parental leave was rolled out kind of on the quick. It's a really big deal around the country. It's a really big deal. We matched what the feds are doing, 12-week paid parental. So I think if we just want to keep it first in the larger frame of how awesome it is. First, we all agree? So whatever headaches you might endure for the next little bit, like maybe in the next 2 weeks to a month, whatever headaches you might endure, please keep in mind that this is a big deal, and that there are people, could be you or someone in your family who has a baby or adopts a child, that this is a really big deal. So it got rolled out rather quickly, and so that did not give Cher and the appropriate amount of time to fully test. So by the end of, now I'll turn it over to Audrey.
Okay, so Jim is actually working on this very diligently. And we have 2 new TRCs that will be rolled out by the end of the week. Do you want to talk more about it, or do you want me to just?
Not much other than
You have to be at the mic.
the TRCs are going to be,
Keep going.
okay. The TRCs, there are going to be 2 TRCs, one for paid parental leave, one for FMLA parental leave. Unfortunately, initially, we're not going to have any restrictions around it, except that hopefully it's going to be administrators only to enter it. Okay, so employees can't enter it and managers or supervisors can't enter it. So it'll have to be someone like you, whoever the administrator is, to enter it and approve it. Eventually, we're going to have rules around who's eligible, like you have to have a year's of eligibility as a full-time employee or whatever the rule is. We'll have that in place quickly, but for now, there's not going to be any kind of restriction around, if you enter it and you approve it, it's going to be paid.
Yeah, so it's up to HR to
You
really,
have to go to the mic.
so it's up to HR to really manage and make sure that the employees are eligible
now.
for it.
So I'll just say that with respect to the rules, like any of the codes that get created, like when fitness and wellness, alternative work schedule, any of those codes, that there's a testing environment that you all know that Cher does, and so runs it through its traps and spindles it and chews on it to make sure that it's going to work on the other side. So in the short term, again, remember, fantastic policy, 12 weeks paid parental leave. It's groundbreaking. Hardly anybody's doing it in the States. That in the short term, you as the HR managers, you will be in control of when somebody gets approved for it. So you already know who has on parental leave or who's going to go on parental leave in your agencies. And so we've had conversations already. As soon as it dropped, we know there are people who are already out, who are eligible, out on parental, who became eligible as of January 1st. And we know that there are people who are about to become eligible. So we all know, and because they're talking to you, because who's having who's going to start their family or join their family in their agency. And we know that there are some agencies where there's a lot of people and there's a lot more happening. And so we appreciate, in the case of particular agencies, that you are bearing with us for the short term while we get it, everything tested in an environment, so that whatever pain we have is in the very short term, and that all those bugs get worked out. There was a specific question about the MCOP. So it's in the policy that says currently, if this should just be your base pay without the MCOPs. What we've learned is that is really administratively kooky. So we're doing some more testing to see how that can work or would work. But in the meantime, in the short term, if someone's going out and you've got someone on paid parental right now, pulling it back and pulling it up and back, and just leave it on until we figure out how it works. So I want to just this is on our team. Thank you to April for bringing this to our attention this morning, like a real world example in DPS. So thank you. And one second, Stephanie. And I think, so there will be instances where you'll say, well, I have a person who X and Y and Z, and that will be something that we'll talk to with our consultants. But go ahead, Stephanie. So I think probably we'll get another question done.
Would it be helpful if we emailed CFA and said, hey, we have this person on parental leave, their base rate of pay is this, and they can
No. So we're not going to do that in the short term. We're going to let's get our rules fixed up and see. But thank you for that. So we did talk today in the Share Leads meeting about overrate, and we think that will cause more confusion and the off and back than it will be if we just leave them all on until we get it all figured out.
We have questions. Will the paid parental leave impact para?
No, paid parental leave, the question is, will it impact para? No, everything continues.
And will the accumulator pull the FML PPL usage?
That's not English.
In other words,
Will the accumulator,
For the balance of the 480 that you're entitled to X amount.
so the answer yes?
People do because it's an FML.
Okay, what's the question again? Will the accumulator pull the FML PPL usage? Yes.
And then another one. In the policy, it states term employees are not eligible. Can we please get clarification? We have a lot of STEM positions.
Yeah, we understand this has come up a number of times. So the issue with the STERM and the terms are that these people are federally funded and those grants do not allow for it. And so until the grant language gets worked out on the Fed side, this has nothing to do with our side, it's the Fed side. It puts the Fed money at issue. And this first came up with DVR, it's come up with DWS, and it's conversations with the grant side, the grantor side. The good thing that I see about this one is that since the Feds are now going to 12 weeks paid parental leave and they just signed it, that there's a possibility that that can, but in this moment, no, because it puts their Fed money in jeopardy. Any more questions? Oh, Brenda, Ms. Geets.
I'm not sure this is, I have a couple of questions. So I read the policy governs down the executive order, and I'm a little confused about, are we still, so sometimes male employees go out and they go out on FMLA and they use care for their spouse.
So the question is a male entitled to paid parental leave? Yes.
Yes, he is, but, so then if he goes out on that, he still would have FMLA available to him at a later date, correct?
No, the paid parental and FML run concurrently if you still have FML. If you don't have any more FML left in your bucket, then it's paid parental by itself.
We always go default to FMLA first.
You'd go paid parental with FML together.
Okay.
Together.
Okay, so second question is, in the executive order, it didn't say anything about same employer utilizing, sharing the time, sharing the 12 weeks of FML.
So are you saying, so the question is whether,
So right now, FMLA, if employees go out for the same reason.
meaning two
their
parents, meaning
Right.
two parents go out.
Two parents go out to bond with their child, and split the 12 weeks.
Okay, so no. So the policy is clear that you do not split. Each parent is eligible for the 12 weeks. So but they must, the caveat is that birth plus 6 months, the 12 weeks for each of those parents must be used if they're state employees within the 6-month period. But each parent can use a full 12 weeks. There's no splitting.
One more question.
Brenda in the house.
So it also said that they could use it intermittently, whereas the federal regs say that they have to take it for care for a newborn in one lump sum.
Yeah, that's why we're better than them.
Okay. I know you can always be better. I can do it.
Yeah, we are. Thank you. And the question was, the federal rule says you must take your 12-week for an infant altogether, and ours says you can do it intermittently, and you can do it intermittently, which also makes it more confusing on the share side as well. But that's why we're all one family.
What about the terms paid with GF special appropriations?
What about the terms paid with GF special appropes? General fund special appropriation, but special appropriation is generally a 1 year. Right?
Not always. There are multi-years.
I think I would ask the question back, is the employee a classified term, STERM? What are they? That's the question. That would be my response. It's a lot of questions. Yep, so they're not eligible. And in the back, Chuck.
I'm sorry if I missed my answer, but so the TRC will be in there by Friday, or it's not going to be used?
So, yeah, Jim and one of our, and Krishna are currently working on getting that into the test environment. And we anticipate having it in by Friday. Yes.
Yes.
It's
So,
not admin leave.
yeah, so yes, if not, you can use admin leave, put a note in there. And then our recommendation would be, or at least my recommendation, I could be overridden here, would be that you can go back after we have the,
Yes.
and change it, yes.
Okay, thank you.
We'll have it in.
Okay.
We will have it in.
Okay, Any other questions related to share tax? Donna, Beal in the back.
I have a question, but it's related to the HCM form that we spoke about earlier. So the form's been revamped, and I have a question about the email section part of that form, because there's confusion, and there's always been a confusion where the email that is tied under shared security, those tasks, and you know, where you tie the employee's email account so that they receive the notifications when you make changes to their timesheet and things like that. And every time we send an email to get that field updated, we're told it's correct in job data, but that's not the email address that is reading it. It's reading it under shared security. And if for those employees or HR managers or employees that did not work under shared security, they don't even have any idea that that field exists. So is there a way to identify the shared security email stuff on that form so that you document the job data email address and what should be placed in shared, because we have discrepancies and we hold that.
So I'm just going to shorthand the question is about the HCM form and the email addresses associated with it and about the security around it or something to that effect. So I will now turn it over to Vanessa, who will come back up to the podium. She looks very confident in her answer, Donna.
Okay, so yes, there are two places where there is email. There's the email in job data. It's actually it's not in job data, it's actually in personal data, where you update and always for just plug for recruiting, make sure that you do double check that ID as it comes over, because if they have a Gmail, it's going to default to that. So we want to just plug that real quick. But as far as the share security form goes, there is a place where emails must be put in, and it's set up with security. Nothing to do with the form, nothing to do with the personal data email. But if you need those to match, you would email shares. Yes.
Sometimes only send the help tickets, nobody knows what I'm talking about. So how do we streamline that? Because we're going and we spend a lot of time.
So is your issue that they're not it's being incorrectly put in from the form into the security area where email is?
So we have an employee that was terminated,
Uh-huh.
state employee, they come back and they are reissued a new email address.
Okay.
So whenever there's changes, they're not receiving a notification. So we send an email to share, my staff is sending an email to Dwayne, and Dwayne does take action and job information, right?
Right.
But it needs to be corrected on the shared security side. So how can we streamline that so that when that area needs to be updated, how does the rest of the HR community able to identify that and not be confused?
So I think yeah, so fix the form. Yeah, so anyway, the question was, how does the share security profile, the email portion of that, get updated to match the correct email address that's in personal data, which is generally supposed to be your business. That's the standard, is to have your business at state.nm or whatever whatever salary planning work for if there's a different domain. So I believe that the best case answer would be to email share security, ensure that the form, so separate from Dwayne, email share security, the email address, and just let them know that you need the updated email address. And of course, if it's a new employee, you're going to want to make sure that that email, because what's on that form when it's initially submitted to the security desk, that matches, that it's correct and you've done your due diligence, because there is a lot of that where people change names or they do different things, and we just one second, just so that you know that we recycle the share logins. So that isn't up. They've had a 6-month, I think, separation. Yeah. So can I?
Well, wouldn't the shared security desk use the email on the form?
Correct. That's where that. So what's on the form is what's going to be put in to share security on the share security side. If there's an issue, I would email maybe share security. Yeah.
Honestly, I think
Yeah.
we're so far in the
Yeah. I don't. Yeah. I think it's something different from
Yes.
the form from the. Yeah.
Thank you.
Do you have
question, a scenario from Zoom.
Okay, so I'm going to call our attention to that is 2:30 now, and we're going to move over. So we're going to take one more question on the Zoom and one more question in the room.
All right, so the question is, if an employee uses their FMLA time prior to the birth of their child,
Yes.
what is the
If,
TRC?
so if somebody uses their FML before the birth of their child and has exhausted their FML, then they use the paid parental leave by itself. There's going to be two codes. One is paid parental leave and one is paid parental with FML. So they would use paid parental. Okay, and then one more question in the room. Mark.
So it's an HCM question. I'm wondering, like, when we're managing time in HCM, the default always is a calendar week. Is there any way to make the default calendar period?
Yes.
We see both weeks at a time. If so, is that in a job aid that I can just find it there? Or?
So the question is about, can we make calendar period instead of calendar week? Is there a way to have two choices? And Audrey is.
Yeah, I don't know if, I think it's in a job aid somewhere. I can't tell you off the top of my head.
Yeah, I
Karen
don't
thinks
think
it's
that's-
self-service.
There is.
Okay,
There is a job aid, it's the self-service one. Okay, so I mean,
okay, no.
yeah,
It's a
we're not
meeting.
gonna show you, but,
Okay.
I'll find it.
yeah.
Okay, so I want to say,
Options.
thank you to our special guests. Thank you to Lakeisha and Audrey and Vanessa. Thank you to Cassie. Thank you to Jim. Thank you for Krishna. Thank you to Mark. Thank you to everybody who's here to support the tax side, the share side, which is an important part of our entire house. So I want to just say thank you, you guys, very much for being here.